Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. This is the programme that comes direct from the Holy Land, bringing you the stories of Jewish and Arab Christians living there now. Today I'm talking to a Jewish believer called Brian Slater. I met him recently in Netanya, a city just north of Tel Aviv. He was born into a secular Jewish family in Los Angeles, and today he's running soup kitchens in Israel to help the poor and needy. Where did it all begin?
As a young child, I got involved with the wrong crowd and grew up with a difficult childhood, and that took me down a road of drug and alcohol abuse myself, and to the point of even selling drugs when I was 15, 16 years old, and stealing and lying and cheating and doing that whole lifestyle that goes with the life of drugs and alcohol abuse. So at 17 years old was when God just took his hand and pulled me up and took me out of this lifestyle, and that happened through getting arrested in Malibu, California, and going into a rehab center myself, and by the grace of God, I was able to stay clean one day at a time and met some wonderful people. I was one of the youngest kids in the 12-step program that I was going to every day, and it was through a Gentile man that did counseling with youth that he started counseling with me and slowly shared the gospel with me and about the future of Israel and the Jews from the Bible. And that really was an amazing thing to me, to know that God was going to use me as a Jew to be a light and a fulfillment of prophecy here in Israel and to my people. I had no idea I was going to live in Israel at that time, at 17 years old.
What happened next?
Well, that was when I accepted the Lord and really lost my Jewish identity, actually, because didn't know that it was popular to be Jewish and believe in Jesus, and had no idea about Messianic Jews. But after about a year of growing up in the Lord in a Baptist church, I discovered other Jewish believers in Jesus, Yeshua, and this was where I discovered that there's Messianic congregations, and started attending one and celebrating the biblical feasts and regaining my identity as a Jew and as a Messianic Jew, and what that was all about and how the scriptures applied to me as a believer in Yeshua.
What's it like being brought up in a Jewish family, obviously a secular Jewish family, and then having this dawn of realization?
Amazing and awesome. And it still is. I mean, a lot of times I have to pinch myself and realizing what God is doing in me and through me today here in Israel. And all I can do is thank him. And I look around and I see the great need that people have in the world that we're living in and where it's going. And it's such an honor to be a follower of Yeshua and share the hope that's within me.
So you came to Israel?
I did. I immigrated to Israel when I was 26. And now that's about 15 years later. And this was after coming and visiting Israel a couple times, and once was just on a 2-week tour, and the second time was to come as a volunteer for several months, and volunteered in a drug and alcohol rehab center up in Haifa when I was here, and then immigrated as a Messianic Jew to Israel from Los Angeles.
You know, coming from the comfort of Los Angeles to live in Israel, it's not an easy thing, is it?
Absolutely not. You know,
you must have been very sure.
I was, it was a real big step of faith, and just was trusting God that His plan and His promises in His Word were being fulfilled and going to be fulfilled in me and through me.
Because you didn't have the language, yet you came to work in a psychiatric hospital here. You must have been on a steep learning curve.
Absolutely. It was very, very difficult. And just took a lot of persistence and faith and praying and trusting that I made the right decisions. And this is going against the flow completely of my family and friends and even believers, because this was around the time that there was a lot of terrorist bombings in Israel as well, and everyone thought that I was absolutely crazy, but I knew that God had a plan and a purpose for me in coming to Israel at the time that I did.
Just an aside, Brian, you mentioned that your family thought you were mad.
Yes. Yeah. They were not happy about the decision I was making, but, I was living on my own. I was 26 years old. I was working. I was independent and had some, a few $1,000s saved up, and, pretty much just took my life savings and started a whole new life here.
Let's bring the story up to date, because you eventually met your wife. You now have 3 young children, as we've mentioned. But you are working with a sector of Israeli society that maybe not many people know about. You're working with those who are living largely below the poverty line, with Holocaust survivors, with drug addicts. Just tell me about what an average week is for you here.
Well, I manage several soup kitchens and clothes distribution centers, and what we do is several times a week we open these facilities. One is in Tel Aviv, or a couple in Tel Aviv, and one in Netanya, and we're in the process of opening another one, an additional one in the center of Netanya. And the people come in and they sit down. We set up the tables and serve them as if they're sitting in one of the best restaurants in Israel, and really honor them and show them the love of God in word and in deed.
Can you tell me a typical story of one of those people? How do they come to be in that position?
The people come from all different backgrounds. I mean, a common one is new immigrants from Russia that come here, and most of them have to find ways to make a living because their career that they had is not recognized here, and they find themselves extremely challenged, just like I was, but they're coming from a completely different part of the world and society as well, and they are just trying to do what they can to make it, and a lot of them resort to drug and alcohol abuse or prostitution even, and falling through the cracks, basically, because the government of Israel tries to help its immigrants, but the assistance is very minimal, very little, and only for a certain amount of time. So these are the type of people I come in touch with, as well as Ethiopian Jews and, like I said, Holocaust survivors, and a lot of them that have fallen into the cracks.
You mentioned drug addicts as well. Is that a big problem here?
Yes, it's become a lot larger, and especially with the massive influx of Russian immigrants that have a lot of culturally acceptable drinking habits in Russia, and they come here, and it's not culturally acceptable, and not only that, it kills them, and it affects their children, it affects their families, it affects their marriages. And so you deal with a lot of brokenness from all sides of the family and their community that they're involved in.
How are you able to help them long term? This must be one of your real concerns, is that you're not just giving them literally a bowl of soup, but you are actually helping them to get out of that situation.
Yeah, what I do, really, a majority of it is about relationship building. And as I do this day in, day out, every week, I build relationships with people and really, help them to feel like family. And those that are open to the idea of getting help, we have a rehab center that we refer them to. Those that are dealing with addictions of drugs and alcohol. And I've been able to take people in my car straight off the streets of Tel Aviv and bring them into the rehab, and with cuts and wounds and all over their body and no shoes and stinky as you can imagine, and give them a new life and a new hope and a new chance in the rehab center, being able to counsel them, teach Bible studies, and give them small work projects to help give them value and bring them back to regular life.
Brian Slater, a Jewish believer with a big heart who's running soup kitchens in Israel. You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. If you've been touched by hearing Brian's story and would like to help, you can do this through the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, a charity based in the UK that supports Jewish and Arab Christians. For more information, articles and books, please visit our website www.olivetreefund.org, where you can also leave a donation. And if you'd like to receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either email inquiries@olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, PO Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. Join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.